Welcome to the December 17th, 2024 meeting of the MCCSC Board of School Trustees. We ask that you please come to order. The first item is a celebration of success, a time set aside to celebrate members of our school community. Mrs. Harmon.
Thank you, President Hennessy, Dr. Winston, the Board of Trustees, and community members. It's my pleasure to share a few highlights of this month's Celebration of Success and Equity Spotlight Award winners. The Celebration of Success is a feature of every Board of School Trustees meeting. It recognizes the achievement of MCCSC employees, students, and volunteers who make a difference in our school community. For the December Celebration of Success, we would like to recognize BHSN student Sophia Crayutisu. Sophia was a finalist for the Coca-Cola Scholarship, finalist for the National Senate Youth Program, and is the co-founder of Global Learners. Global Learners are a group of high school students with the goal of building a strong and accessible global education for students around the world and to reduce media bias and create a beneficial organization for youth. The Equity Spotlight Award recognizes students, faculty, staff, student organizations, schools, and community partners for fostering inclusive environments that reflect the MCCSC mission, vision, and core values. The December 2024 Equity Spotlight Award honors two outstanding educators at Bloomington High School North. Miss Olivia Paul, English Language Learning Coordinator and Spanish teacher, and Miss Elizabeth Sweeney, English Language Learning and English Language Arts teacher. Both are celebrated for their exceptional dedication to supporting students who are new to Bloomington and learning English as a new language. Using a variety of creative strategies and tools, they help students overcome language barriers, engage with the curriculum, and succeed academically. Ms. Paul and Ms. Sweeney create a warm and supportive environment, helping students and their families feel welcomed and valued. Their culturally responsive teaching practices enhance learning while strengthening the community within their classrooms and beyond. Thank you, Ms. Paul and Ms. Sweeney, for all you do. Thank you.
On behalf of the board, Mrs. Harmon, and we thank you and congratulations to all the winners of these spotlights tonight. I appreciate your time and your labor and your energy. We will now continue with public comment. We have just two cards tonight, so we will start with Danny Raymond and then we will move on to Ruth Eit.
Good evening. Thank you, Board of Trustees, for this opportunity to comment this evening. I am Danny Raymond. I am a parent of two elementary school children in this district, and I have long been interested in equity in public education. Having been engaged in a conversation with MCCSC in working toward equity in the possible merger of two schools in this past year, I have learned a lot. I have witnessed firsthand how hard our school leadership is willing to work and how capable they are to find solutions that are viable for all those involved, from teachers and staff to families and students. This has required a decent number of hours of my time, but that pales in comparison to the work I know our district leaders have put in to build a workable merger plan. At last month's board meeting, the community watched a presentation on the board on both the initial considerations for a redistricting effort across the district and an extensive review of a merger plan for Childs and Templeton. After watching all of this and participating for the last year, I strongly recommend that the board consider redistricting and move away from the continuing to consider a merger of these two schools. While I believe that the merger would work toward equity goals, and I also believe that our amazing schools would work to make it as positive as possible, I do not believe that a merger would address the larger problems of SCS equity in our district. I believe that the enormous amount of time and effort put into a plan for that merger would be much better spent on the larger task of redistricting, an effort that will require at least as much thought, data compiling, and community input. I ask that the board continue to seek strong data that would inform redistricting efforts and work pragmatically toward better SES across our district for all students. It is a large task and surely one that is complicated and difficult and will not have a perfect solution by any means. But I believe that this is something our district has been in need of for a while and is ready to see happen if it is done right. I hope that this board can be the leaders in making that happen. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ruth.
Hello, my name is Ruth Eit. I am the outgoing chair of the Monroe County NAACP Schools Subcommittee. On behalf of the NAACP, I am here to correct a statement someone made during a public comment segment at the November board meeting. The NAACP has not spoken out against a split-grade merger of Templeton and Childs Elementary Schools. To date, the NAACP has not taken a position for or against any proposed merger or redistricting. Revisiting the NAACP's January 2024 public comments related to balancing elementary SES and MCCSC, I quote, "We believe 3 points from the Indiana NAACP Black Academic Excellence Plan are especially relevant. Eliminate segregation of schools based on race, income, neighborhood housing integration patterns, and inequitable policies. 2, demonstrate high expectations for all Black students in order to close the achievement and opportunity gap. 3, engage parent, student, and community voices." Our January comments continued. The SES discussion is an important one. All children deserve high expectations, access to resources that support their success in school, and the opportunity to learn with and from others in their community. We continued, as the board carefully considers how to proceed, please prioritize equity-centered engagement with those who face scheduling, transportation, language, and cultural barriers that may prevent them from being here tonight. That was at the board meeting, from sending an email or from responding to a survey. Please make your decisions with input from everyone you were elected to represent and honor the needs of all of our children. That's the end of the quoted segment. Since January, our NAACP branch has been happy to host 2 events that allowed for different perspectives to be shared and heard. Our branch continues to support the MCCSC equity and diversity goals and to monitor progress towards those goals. Thank you for the opportunity to speak and to reiterate the NAACP's position.
Thank you very much. That now closes public comments. We thank all of you for making your positions and perspectives known to us tonight. Now for our consideration is the consent agenda that includes the following: the memorandum from executive sessions held on November 11th, 18th, and 19th, 2024, minutes from the hearing and board meeting held on November 19th, 2024, overnight and out-of-state field trips, the financial report from November 2024, appropriation balance report November 2024, the register of claims December 17th, 2024, payroll register and payroll claims November 2024, request to declare as surplus and authorize disposal of out-of-date items. Do I have a motion regarding the approval of the consent agenda?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
It's been moved by Ross and seconded by Ashley that we approve the consent agenda as presented. All those in favor of the motion to approve the consent agenda signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any against? Any abstentions? The motion is carried. Next, for our consideration, are donations. We have received donations of over $1,000. We thank all of our donors for their generosity. Do I have a motion to accept the donations?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
It's been moved by Ashley and seconded by Ross that we accept the donations as presented. All those in favor of the motion to approve the donations, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any against? Any abstentions? The motion carries. Okay, we move on to old business. At the November 19th meeting of the board, it was discussed that we amend Resolution 2024-07. I will make a motion to bring Resolution 2024-07 to the floor for discussion. Do I have a second?
Second.
It's been moved by me and seconded by Ross that we bring Resolution 2024-07 to the floor. Are there any comments from the board?
I'd like to move that we add Resolution 2024-20 to rescind Resolution 2024-07.
I have a motion to add Resolution 2024-20, which is to rescind Resolution 2024-07. Do I have a second?
Second.
It's been moved by Aaron and seconded by Brandon. And so now I will open the floor for discussion. Or actually, Aaron, would you like to?
Thank you.
Yes.
So I have given a paper copy of Resolution 2024-20 to all the board members
It includes a few whereas statements, but I'd like to summarize those before we open the floor for further discussion. So I just want to note that the original resolution 2024-07 referred to itself as a backstop. It acknowledged that redistricting might be a more comprehensive way of addressing socioeconomic imbalance within our schools. But it also acknowledged that redistricting can be a slow and possibly even unrealistic process. And for that reason, we wanted to pursue a plan to merge two schools to move forward on our equity goals. The resolution also acknowledged that we maintained authority to rescind or amend that resolution. We committed to doing that by December of 2024. That was in April, and since April, a lot of things have happened. We have signed a contract with a demographer who's been working with us on a redistricting effort. Last month, we received a report from that demographer, Preston Smith. That report gave us a lot of new information that we didn't have back in April. It also gave us 14 different possible redistricting scenarios, 4 of which included mergers between Childs and Templeton. And so the thing that I really want to emphasize about this motion to rescind is that it is not intended to eliminate the possibility of merging Childs Elementary and Templeton Elementary. It instead is designed to continue that conversation in concert with a comprehensive redistricting plan. So the critical whereas statement says the Monroe County Community School Corporation Board of Trustees may merge Childs Elementary and Templeton Elementary School should that be determined to be the best course of action as part of comprehensive redistricting. So again, it's not intended to take the merger off the table, but instead to sort of consolidate these two considerations.
Thank you, Erin. I'll open the floor for discussion on this.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I have been a proponent of redistricting at MCCSC. I would say probably for the past 10 years. And I think about 6 years ago, after I got on the board, and Kathy was on the board at the time, we were part of helping to get a fireside chat about redistricting and about the history of it. And but I would say over time, being on the board, I realized that the majority of the board at that time and the administration were not interested in having more conversations or further conversations about moving forward with redistricting. And I would say there has not been a majority of the board or the administration that have wanted to take on redistricting to balance SES in the 6 years that I've been on the board. That is why when the board and admin were interested or starting conversations about a merger, to begin to balance the SES socioeconomic status, at that time it seemed like the only way to begin to start to balance SES disparities in MCCSC, and it seemed like it was better than nothing. In the past few months, or even longer than that, the majority of the board and I believe, I don't want to speak for them, but the new administration team, more than ever, I think have expressed being okay with beginning discussing and pursuing redistricting for the reason of socioeconomic balance. So I will say I'm very excited for this movement and for this chance. Over the years, the board and the admin and even the community that we've heard from want to begin this conversation and want to begin moving towards possibly redistricting for SES balance. I know that it will be difficult. The process will be tedious at times, but my hope is that we can actually make this much needed SES balance change that is long overdue in this community. And my hope is that it can be achieved in an effective and efficient way. So I just wanted to say my thoughts on it. I'm excited that we're moving forward with this. I'm excited to serve with this board that I believe are excited to move forward with this. I'm excited that community members seem excited as well about this, and the administration is willing to move forward with this with us together. not much of a discussion point.
No, I mean, it's
talking.
good to hear from you, Brandon. I think that's important for people to hear your perspective. Other people?
Well, I share what Brandon has said. I'm really excited as somebody who's been watching and participating in the process of trying to ensure that our elementary schools are not as economically segregated as they've been. I am really glad to hear that the merger is still on the table as 4 of those options. I'm I know that the administration did an intense amount of work, and I remember in April when we talked about doing this that it was really important that we not expend that much time to this effort to then throw it out at the end. And I recognize that we're not doing that, that we're looking at a broad redistricting and how that fits in. The thing that was exciting to me, although angered my neighbors and friends, was the idea that this very concentrated group of people in these 2 different schools, where they're so clearly segregated by income, would be able to share opportunity and resources and social capital and actually benefit one another in that sharing in a way that's different from a lot of redistricting, because the fact of the matter is that people with privilege tend to hoard that opportunity, and they don't always do it with understanding that that's what they're doing, and sometimes they do. And I think that having that much, keeping school communities together so that they were moving to a school together instead of dividing across the street. My friend that I've been going to school with now is not going to school with me, except by age group, I suppose. I thought that that was a really great idea, and I'm glad that it will still be considered, because I think that the benefits for kids, and that's ultimately who we're for, will far outweigh a cost, because lots of times people are more interested in having. I know that when I lived in Glen Ellen, I should have been anonymous. Oh well. When we lived there for a year, my husband and I picked that school because we thought it was very diverse, and we were excited about the diversity for our son, who was in 2nd grade. And it turned out that the diversity that my kids saw was bussed in from a neighboring city or neighboring town. And so those children were called the apartment kids. And I overheard a parent saying, well, we're going to have a birthday party, but we're not going to be inviting those apartment kids. And there's a lot of things that happen that way when you have just an apartment complex or some small area be the diversifying factor for an otherwise fairly well-to-do and educationally, up there community. So anyway, that's my long thing to say on my very last night, that I'm glad to see that it is still something that we're considering, because I feel like it is very, very important to kids that we do that sharing.
Thanks, Kathy. Other comments?
I just wanted to take a moment again to state my gratitude to Dr. Winston and her team for the tireless efforts that they have put into this. I think that, I appreciate what Brandon had to say. Looking into this merger was a very important step, and I think that it kind of created a way for us to have all these conversations with the public, and in the course of the following months, all of these meetings that Dr. Winston and her team have had, people have started to really begin to come on board that may have been not in favor of changing things up. And so I appreciate that time that you've taken, because I think it's done a lot. To the feedback that I've received is that people feel much more at ease because you're all taking such a deep and mindful look at all of this. And I just think with all of the information we received from Preston Smith last month, with the 14 different scenarios, as board member or Vice President Cooperman pointed out, there are still options that were in those scenarios about merging. Some of the scenarios even included closing buildings. So I hope the public will understand that there are difficult choices to be made. We don't take these choices lightly. And so I hope that we can all continue to have positive dialogue with each other. But again, thank you to the board and to the admin team for all that you've done with this.
Thank you, Erin. Yeah, I agree. I do think in many ways the conversation about the merger. Wow, that one's going to end up somewhere. The conversations about the merger have catalyzed, have been a catalyst for the conversations around redistricting, because I think if we'd come out of the gate saying, hey, everyone, we're going to redistrict this district, I mean, there would have been massive uproar, right, as well. And I understand too. I mean, when you have seen redistricting get sort of knocked down over and over and over in a space or in a town or in a district, it's really hard to imagine that you can do that, right, with the support of any part of your community. And so, you begin to think in sort of like micro moves, right? And so those little micro moves become easier to manage in some ways than an entire district effort all at once. But I do think that it's led us to this point of being able to have broader conversations. And yes, I want to also reiterate, the work that's been done. I don't want anyone to feel like that was wasted time or work. I see that as having been really sort of crucial for us in lots of ways. One, I think having those conversations and the work that Dr. Winston and her team did were sort of trust building, exercises. And not only that, it helped build, I think, the confidence of the community members engaged in those conversations in the competence of the district leadership. And I think that's really, really important as we move forward. And the other thing is, yes, obviously, there's a potential that the merger is still on the table as we move forward with these options. And so the work that was done is good work in that it informs the choices and the options that we have as we move forward. And the last thing that I want to say is I really, really hope that people don't drop out of the conversation at this moment, right? At the very start of this, I said in a board meeting that I am taking notes and taking names of every single person who's come to talk to us about redistricting and how much in favor they are of that as a solution. And that I would come back to call on them and sort of hold them accountable if we moved in that direction. And I mean that. I'm going to be like Santa, who is like taking names and checking the list, right? Because I think in order for us to really move this forward, it's going to require people to be champions for us in this process, right? And so I am asking the community to continue to champion this work in the way that you've sort of proposed to us that you will. And I think last, I just want to note that we have a unique district. I mean, we really do. I know that most districts probably think that across wherever, right? But I think it's unique in the fact that we do have a lot of very educated, highly informed people who want to be plugged in particular ways. And I think that our district is probably, like many other places, still very segregated, right? Our county, our city is still very segregated in terms of housing. And so we know, and we've said this over and over, that means that our schools are segregated. So this is not a problem that we can solution on our own. But it does mean that we have some kind of like strange outlier areas. And Preston Smith spoke to that, right? So the solution for this may not look like the solution for other places. And I just want us to hold that in mind as we move forward. But just grateful for the conversations that we've had across the community, with the administration, with the board, and glad that we've landed here at this point. Anyone else?
I have a comment that I think makes more sense after we take a vote. Can I do that? Or I could wait till the board comment thing at the end. I can wait till board comments.
Yeah, that's fine.
I still don't understand how Robert's rules and those things kind of work, so I can wait.
Okay. Well, if there are no other comments on the table, then we will take a vote to adopt Resolution 2024-20, which is to rescind resolution 2024-07. So do I need to make a motion to vote? We already motioned to putting this at the table. I need to make a motion we can just vote now. Okay, cool. Just checking, because there was a lot of different things going on. Yes, and Brandon seconded. Okay, so at this time, I'd like to call for a vote. All those in favor of adopting Resolution 2024-20 to rescind Resolution 2024-07, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any against? Any abstentions? The motion carries. All right, we move on to the personnel report. Next for our consideration is the personnel report. Do I have a motion to approve this personnel report as presented?
So moved.
It's been moved by Ross. Do I have a second? Seconded by Ashley that we approve the personnel report as presented. Dr. Henderson.
President Hennessy, Dr. Winston, and members of the Board of School Trustees, this evening I would like to call your attention to the following certified staff retirement contained in the personnel report. Michelle Wells. Mrs. Wells has been serving the students of MCCSC for 36 and a half years, most recently serving as a special education coordinator at the administration building. At this time, I would request that you please approve the recommendations as presented in your board packet in the personnel report.
Thank you, Dr. Henderson. Any comments from the board? Okay. All those in favor of the motion to approve the personnel report signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any against? Any abstentions? The motion carries. We move on to policies for first reading. Tonight, 3 policies will be presented for first reading. Dr. Henderson will provide information on policies 1200, 3210, and 4210, staff ethics and professional conduct. Dr. Henderson.
President Hennessy, Dr. Winston, and members of the Board of School Trustees, this evening I would like to present to you for first reading policies 1200, administration, 3210, new policy for professional staff, and 4210, new policy for support staff. Staff ethics and professional conduct are presented for the first reading. Changes have been made to update policy 1200 and to align new policies for professional and support staff. The alignment of all 3 policies maintains existing standards and expectations for the ethical and professional conduct of all employees. These policies are presented for the first reading this evening and will be presented for the second and final reading at the January 28th, 2025 school board meeting.
Thank you, Dr. Henderson. As this is a first reading, no action is required. The policies will be presented for a second and final reading at the January 28th regular meeting of the board. Please let Dr. Winston know if you have any questions regarding these policies. We move on to contracts. Do I have a motion to approve the contracts and 1 bid as presented?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
It's been moved by Ashley and seconded by Ross that we approve the contracts and 1 bid as presented. Mr. Kenny.
Good evening, President Hennessy, Dr. Winston, members of the board. There are 3 contracts and 1 bid to be awarded before you tonight. I would like to highlight the contract with Silver Strong & Associates LLC tonight. This contract is recommended by Dr. Henderson. It is a 3-year contract to provide the Thoughtful Classroom Teacher Effectiveness Framework. The total cost of this agreement is not to exceed $399,760 and will be paid for from the Education Fund. A bit of background, the MCCSC has been utilizing the Marzano Teacher Effectiveness Rubric and the online tool iObservation to conduct evaluations of certified staff members for the last 10 years. At the conclusion of the 24-25 school year, the agreement between Marzano Research and iObservation is ending, and there are no plans for Marzano Research to enter into an agreement with any other technology provider to allow for the continued use of the Marzano Teacher Effectiveness Rubric as our model. During the 23-24 school year, the Evaluation Oversight Committee met to review and compare various evaluation models and technology tools and ultimately made a recommendation to MCCSC administration to move forward with the selection of the Thoughtful Classroom Teacher Effectiveness Framework as our effectiveness model and Education Advance as our technology tool. an initial contract for the use of Educational Advance as the electronic tool, as well as the means by which support staff evaluations would be included as a part of the electronic tool, was agreed to during the 23-24 school year. This contract provides the necessary professional development for our evaluators and instructional coaches to be able to conduct evaluations and provide coaching supports for our professional staff. I recommend approval of this contract and the other contracts and bid award presented to you this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kenny. Are there any comments from the board? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor of the motion to approve the contracts and one bid, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any against? Any abstentions? The motion carries. We move now to district updates. Looks like we have Dr. Chris Finley. Do you want me to do this introduction? No? Okay. Dr. Chris Finley, who's the Executive Director of Coordinated School Services and Strategic Partnerships, and he will present on equity goal number 4, health and safety. Dr. Finley.
Thank you, Board President Hennessy, Dr. Winston, members of the board. Tonight I'll be presenting on Equity Goal 4. Equity Goal 4 is within our strategic plan. And again, Equity Goal 4 is to meet the mental and physical needs of students in an equitable manner by continuing to study and establish effective measures related to health and safety. And our outcomes are to promote student physical health, mental health, and overall wellness, and to strengthen programming and procedures to enhance school safety. So within the area of health and safety, it's important to highlight the important people. It's all about the people in any organization, the important people who are a part of this area. We have 40 full-time social workers and counselors who support our students on a daily basis. They're an important part of the school culture and climate and really serve a very important role in our schools. We have 100% implementation of the SEL curriculum. 100% of the teachers are trained in suicide prevention, and 100% implementation of our positive behavior support systems in the schools. We also have 42 health services personnel. 662 school-based vaccinations have taken place this year, and that's up about double over last year. And I think we've really done a nice job of communicating with families. It's all about access to care. Our health offices have done a great job reaching out to our families and making sure that they know the vaccinations that need to be in place. 330 students have received dental care through our health offices as well. We have 84 AEDs in place, and that's up quite a bit over the last couple of years, and we've really made a big emphasis. Each school has a cardiac crisis team in place, so 100% of our schools are considered heart-safe schools in the event of a cardiac crisis. 19 school safety personnel, and 100% school-based implementation of Visitor Aware and Stop It. And within the area of school safety, I do want to highlight, we do have 5 school resource officers. We've transitioned one of those positions to a school community safety liaison. She's actually a licensed social worker, and she's working in our high schools and doing a great job, really focusing on attendance, but more than anything, reaching out to support our families, doing a lot of home visits. She's been working with our social workers, and great work is happening there. And we also have 12 security guards in our secondary schools as well. One of the programs I'd like to highlight is Stop It. We started that last year, and it's an anonymous reporting app, and we've had about 230 reports so far this school year, and we kind of weed through. Some of them are a little bit silly, but then others are extremely important. We take each of them extremely seriously. We make sure that we reach out to school personnel as they come through. Stop It does a nice job, 24/7 monitoring. If there is any type of threat, either a threat to self or a threat to others, Stop It accelerates the seriousness and calls me immediately. And if I don't receive that call, they go to Troy Thomas, one of our school resource officers, and if he doesn't get it, they go to the Bloomington Police Department. So they really escalate those threats to make sure that we're aware of anything that may be happening out there. And as an example, we have had a couple of reports come in of suicidal ideation. We've made sure immediately that students have the social worker, counselor support. We reach out to outside providers and make sure that the families have the support that they need. We also have had a number of incidents of bias reported, and those are addressed immediately. We have a process in place for that. I think we've had about, as an example, 7 incidents of racial bias that have occurred in the schools, and they've been addressed immediately. Each has been investigated. I think 5 of them have been substantiated. And the important piece for us, not only supporting the victim, but then making sure that that educational component is there. It's all about taking those, those teachable moments and making sure it's a great thing with schools. We can try and give those kids an opportunity to get it right. So that educational component is an important part of those as they come through. So it's really been worth it to have that app in place. I think it's provided a lot of support for our students. And then in the student mental health and behavioral health area, we do have 22 social workers again, and that's extremely important. Each school has a social worker, and they're very involved in everything that's happening in the schools. We have 18 school counselors, and I discovered the benefit of those school counselors when I was a principal at Tri-North. I mean, they were just absolutely amazing and really involved in everything that we did at Tri-North. So I know how important they are to the schools. We have 10 full-time RNs. We have 20 health aides. We have 10 assistant health aides in some of our busier health offices. And again, looking at some of the numbers over there, we did have 45,766 health office visits through November. So they're busy places. We've managed 1,560 chronic health conditions, which is important. And then again, I want to highlight our mental health partners, Centerstone, Adult and Child, and Catholic Charities. They all support our students within the school building. We have over 200 students receiving school-based counseling through our outside providers. And we also have a lot of support from Youth Services Bureau, and we refer a lot of families to them, the Truancy Termination Partnership Program, Seeking Safety Program. They have a lot of good things in place, and they do some family counseling as well. And so part of my work has been starting to talk about aligning some of our work and all of the important programs that we do have in place. We have social emotional learning focus, mental health, equity, positive behavior interventions and supports, and restorative practices. And all of these areas focus on social and self-awareness, decision-making capacity, and relationship skills. I mean, ultimately, the goal is to increase student engagement and this feeling of connectedness in school. And so coming off of COVID, we realized more than anything, these students need to feel connected and feel that support. A lot of times with peer groups, with making sure those trusted adults are in the building. You can see this is a busy slide, but a lot of great things in place at each of the tiers, from the universal supports of the second steps SEL curriculum, the DESA screening that takes place, and all of the student support guide was really important this school year as well as that universal support. And then within tier 2, small group work with social workers takes place, student family well checks, whole child support team, and then within tier 3, those social skill intensive instruction pieces that take place, the one-on-one work with social workers. So much good work is happening there, and so we're making sure that students have all the support that they need. And our theory of change here is if we're really supporting students, if they feel safe and connected in schools, then they're going to want to be there and be a part of what we're doing. We know how important school attendance is. Overall, this year we have seen an increase in our attendance, 1.61%, almost 2%. I know that'll continue to improve throughout this year. It's been a real emphasis this school year, and so that was good to see. And specifically within some of those breakout groups, the Black African American category is up 2.69%. Free and reduced category is up 2.49%, and special education category is up 2.4%. And something that's important, we're starting to see that the disparity between our priority groups is coming down, so we're closing that gap a little bit, which is exciting to see. As far as future work, we'll continue restorative practices. I know our principals have talked about the importance of that work, and they're feeling that support in the schools. We want to continue to seek and develop partnerships for mental health supports for students and families outside of school. We've expanded adult and child to Arlington and Fairview this year, and we'll continue to expand that reach. Expand trauma-informed care professional learning and develop a comprehensive mental and behavioral health support system. A lot of great work is happening right And that's it. I think next month we have diversity goal number 2, which is discipline disparity.
Thank you, Dr. Finley. Any questions or comments from the board?
Just grateful for all that work. That's a lot of work in that. And I think it's really exciting that we are caring for the whole child in the way that we look at that education and that discipline piece and their health. Is that holistic way is so effective. And so I'm grateful for all those pieces.
Great. And with attendance this year, the new law that's in place, we've really tried to focus on not getting students in trouble, but really supporting them, trying to figure out what the family needs to make sure their students are able to get to school and feel safe and comfortable there. So a lot of work's happening there.
Yeah.
With that new attendance law,
Mm-hmm.
have we seen more parents sending sick kids to school?
We have. I mean, it's a good question. No, that hasn't been part of it, but we certainly have supported them in anything that they need. Yeah, I don't think it means 6 kids are coming to school. I think, for a while there, we were talking about people taking mental health days, and I think what we started to find a lot of times students feel more disconnected when they are out of school. The more that they're with us and the more that they can feel a part of that, the school day and that interaction with peers, it's really important.
Okay, well, thank you so much.
Okay, thank you.
Next, we have the monthly update on the consolidation of Childs and Templeton Elementary from Dr. Winston. Anything to share?
No, nothing in particular. I think just wanting to acknowledge the hard work of the team. I greatly appreciate the remarks made by board members tonight and outside of this evening in recognition of the time, the effort that's been put into really bringing forward valuable information to help you in your role as board members to make informed decisions. And so we certainly have appreciated having had the opportunity to delve in and to work very closely with our community to really study and examine what are some viable options that can in fact be considered. And I want to just take this opportunity on behalf of our team to say thank you. Thank you for the opportunity that you afforded us for the last 6 months to deeply study this work. And I would also like to just commend the board for your action this evening. So thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Winston. We would move on then to redistricting. Do you have any information or updates to provide there?
I do not have an update on redistricting. I am eagerly awaiting to hear some of the direction that the board might take relative to establishment of priorities in the area of redistricting. And so we are standing ready, eager, and willing to move forward at the appropriate time.
This would actually be time for us to talk about some of those things, I think, briefly. We know, or we saw the presentation, and Preston Smith, he did also ask us for priorities. I wonder if the board wants to have a brief conversation about which priorities we would set and how to set those. Thoughts?
Yes, I'd like that.
Do you have a sense of what those priorities might be?
For me, yeah.
Yeah, okay, sure, go, talk.
SES balance, SES balance, SES balance. One,
Okay.
two, three. I do know that in this conversation, I know that building utilization needs to be discussed and looked at seriously. It seemed like from the presentation that he gave us, but I would hope that that wouldn't be number one on our priority list. I would hope that SES balance would be, but we would take seriously the building utilization. I hope that those can work as 1 and 2, and not utilization with a side of SES balance, because I think that that's maybe, that maybe will just put us in similar places that we find ourselves now down the road, as far as socioeconomic balance, or not imbalance.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Other thoughts or responses?
Yes. Along with that in tandem, I think we need to, when we're looking at how we're going to move forward with this, we also need to look at the transfer policy in between schools, because you can put a plan in place. And if you have the transfer policy that we currently have, it will render redistricting ineffective. So if we're going to look at redistricting, then we also need to modify our transfer plan.
Yeah, I think that was very clear from that conversation. Brandon?
Is that something, I'm just asking, I don't know, is that something that we just need to do work on anyways, aside from, even though it might be the same, is that actually part of that, the same redistricting conversation? Is what I'm wondering, is it something we need to tackle anyways, no matter what happens? Is that something we do separately?
Yeah, it's a good
before?
question. I mean, it certainly could be tackled as a standalone piece. I mean, if we look at our numbers, they're fairly high. I think we'll have to definitely give some thought to, what that looks like and what that means for different populations who are transferring, right? And so I think it will require some amount of
Because that would
sort of
that would
study and
change
discussion.
what we would like, whatever that outcome would happen if we did do that first, the transfer policy, that would ultimately change a lot of things in redistricting, right?
It may. I mean, so there are the things that instantly pop into my mind when we think about transfer. I mean, there's like what was included in that number were, for instance, like ALPS transfers, which are a small number of students, but a lot of times the number gets bigger because we don't think just about the ALPS students, but a lot of times there are sibling transfers. So then you have sibling transfers along with the ALPS transfers. Other things are teacher child transfers. So the transfer of students into buildings with their parents who are teachers. So that would be like another sort of group. And then I think outside of that, we have people transferring into the district. And then we also have people transferring across attendance zones. So lots of different variables there, I think, to consider for sure. But yeah, I think it's worthy of our time discussion.
Yeah, so a couple of things that came to my mind on that. I guess the first question is that a board function or is that an administrative function to describe that policy for transfers? So that's more a question than a statement.
Do we have a policy?
That's another question.
We do.
And who created? I mean, is the board policy?
Yes.
Yeah, please.
There is, in fact, a board policy that speaks to transfers.
Okay. And are we following it currently?
We are following it to a degree,
Okay.
and I think that it's helpful to share that my team and I have been delving into that very deeply, and in the very near future, we'll be prepared to share some additional data on that. But also to Board Member Ross's question regarding, is it a board action? Is it administration? Certainly the development and establishment of the policy is the board work. Implementation and execution and monitoring is the work of the administration. And we are taking a very deep look at all of the socio-political factors that are at play because we do reside in a state that is really expanding on universal choice. That is a significant piece of consideration that we must consider if we are to make any changes to our policy. But we also see some opportunities for us to strengthen our practice and implementation of that policy. I know there have been some questions about staff members and how many of our staff members have children that go to the school where they teach or where they work. We're certainly trying to disaggregate some of that information as well. And so a lot of factors are certainly at play, none of which are easy to address, but all are known, and we are beginning to develop a deeper understanding of all of those issues and challenges, and we'll look forward to sharing some additional information with this board and the community in the very near future.
Thank you, Dr. Winston. I do want to bring us back to the original question because I think we're a little off. I mean, not that we're off course. I think this is important and we need to discuss it and think about it. But in terms of identifying priorities that we can give to the redistricting expert to say, here's what we would like, which scenarios best accomplish these sort of aims or objectives. Brandon has said so far SES balance is number one with an eye on utilization if possible. Do we have other perspectives or opinions?
Can I do a yes and? So,
Sure.
I know you said we were moving past the conversation about transfers, but if I remember Mr. Smith's comment correctly, I think he said that we do have to um, change our transfer policy if we want the redistricting to have any impact. If we are going to prioritize socioeconomic balance, and I agree with Brandon that that would be my number one priority. And he said that we could have multiple priorities that were weighted differently. I sort of wish that we could use cost effectiveness instead of utilization. I think we're sort of using those synonymously, or at least I assume that the reason for maximizing utilization is for cost effectiveness. But of course, we've talked about some of the ways in which there are other factors besides just strictly building utilization that are going to have a cost impact for us. So for me, I would put socioeconomic balance as priority number one and cost effectiveness as a close second.
I agree. I changed my vote.
I agree with that as well because it seemed like at multiple points, Mr. Smith seemed to emphasize, he said you could have SES be your priority, but there are things that could change down the road, and so like people may move to different areas of town, maybe landlords may get rid of apartments and things like that. So I guess I just want to know which would promote, could they just go in hand? Like if we looked at the cost effectiveness, could SES also be, I guess, what's the word I'm looking for? That solve some of those problems? Because I think that it would be a mistake to ignore what he said about the utilization / cost effectiveness, but I completely agree that the whole reason that we started this in the first place was to look at SES. I just don't want to be in a place where if we are seeing a loss in enrollment that has been trending, what that would mean for us financially, so that we wouldn't be able to offer services or things like that to the populations that needed it the most. So I wouldn't say we should just forget about that and solely focus on SES. I think, like you said, like looking at SES with the close second with utilization and or cost effectiveness, however you want to brand it. But I think that both are going to be really important. So I'm anxious just to hear what other folks think and maybe learn a little bit more about what that would look like from our consultant too.
Yeah, and I do remember him saying, that utilization is probably the most stable in this sort of most stable way to reorganize schools because there's less amount of change in that than people moving across boundaries for a variety of reasons where like SES can get imbalanced again. However, I think in our district in the way that it is configured, simply solving for utilization is a challenge, right? Especially because we have some schools that are sort of serve populations and might not be able to fill their buildings, but it's not a school you can close because you'd have to then bus those kids too far in one direction or another. So, I do think it'll be interesting. And I also know that he said, like, you can't equally weight because you'll just end up with a watered down solution. So I think it seems so far that we agree that we would continue to look at SES as a priority and that, yes, we absolutely want to consider cost effectiveness, right? And so that might be time and routing. It might be how many bus routes you end up having. It might be, like a whole number of things. Any other perspectives aside from, or
I was going to add in transportation that has to be a component because I've seen it, adjacent to where I grew up, where there was a strong emphasis on balancing SES, and kids were on buses for over an hour to achieve that, and it failed miserably as a result. So it also has to be part of the conversation that yes, SES balance needs to be the number one priority, and we need to make sure that we're not extending ride times
Mhm.
by an exorbitant amount because we have to do that.
Right.
Well, and then that adds to the cost effectiveness too, because if you do that much extra transportation, your transportation costs rise. So yeah, I think as Brandon said, you've got to make those kind of 1A and B. You've got to have SCS balance, but it still has to be cost effective.
Well, and there have been 2 reports that came from the IDOE that they're looking into. I don't know how it's going to transfer into or translate into law, or if it's going to start as a pilot program and then move on, but it's going to be requiring the public schools to provide the transportation for all schools, for the all charter schools, and then I don't know for sure where it's going to land when it comes to voucher schools, but forcing us to provide that transportation in Monroe County is going to be a hefty, hefty sum at some point to be keeping in mind. And the other thing that they're talking about doing is taking away our ability to have control over our buildings anyway. Mm-hmm. They would give it to a committee that is from the county, that is not elected, that is appointed, and they would be in charge of what's happening to our school buildings, and we would have no say over them anyway. And if the charter schools wanted something here or there, that's what they're looking at doing. So as I exit stage left, I would say pay close attention to what is happening at the state level, and we have a responsibility to tell stories and talk to our legislators, but also to the education committee members in the House and the Senate to really, and the leadership in the caucus, to really get them understanding how this could be just disastrous financially, and what does that mean for our most vulnerable children, because ultimately it's money that goes that way, as vouchers have to the entitled people of wealth paying for their private school tuition, that is taken from our kids that are in desperate need in some cases of services of all kinds of things, of special ed that's never been fully funded. So these are the things that are coming down the pike. So financially, absolutely, we have to pay attention and be mindful, as the NAACP statement is that the kids for whom this could be the most disastrous are not the ones whose parents come to this meeting or come and write us or sign petitions or call. So we have to always be remembering all children, and especially the most vulnerable.
I think it should be acknowledged that a priority for us also will be maximizing teaching and learning. And I don't know that that's a question necessarily for Mr. Smith, but for our experts. And we have already received excellent guidance from Ms. Harmon and others on things like grade configuration and the ways that we can do that in a way that maximizes teaching and learning. And I assume that that will continue to be a priority for this board, even if it's not necessarily something that we pass on to Mr. Smith.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great point.
I think also, again, I don't know how this fits in, but a priority being how do we sustain whatever it is that we do, if that's revisiting this every 3 to 5 years to see where those numbers are, or to have someone like Mr. Smith, like kind of year by year sort of stating what's happening and the changes if we do go forward with redistricting, so that, in 5 years, however amount of time we spend on this, and then in 5 years, all of a sudden, it's all undone by moves or different things. So I would like to make sure we do build in some sort of stability piece where we're checking back on it, and actually maybe even making a policy as a board to say we will, or whoever is in these seats will, every 3 to 5 years, continue to check in on it.
Yeah.
Make adjustments.
No, I mean, I think that's a great point. 3 to 5 might be short. I mean, I think you track data, but maybe, in the 7 to 10 range. I think the more often you're sort of chasing those numbers and aligning, I think the more comfortable your population is with that as a common practice. And so it's not like a surprise every time. It doesn't require the same level of investment and conversation because it's just like a thing that we've become accustomed to doing. So I think that's smart, something that we can certainly look at.
And they usually want census data anyway.
Yes,
So
absolutely.
I would say, like, you could start looking at it before the census, but
Yep,
you wouldn't want anything not in date.
that's right. Absolutely. Other comments? So, Dr. Winston, I don't think this is something we have to officially vote on. It's just a result of conversation, but it does sound like, the board does still value looking at SES balance as the number one priority with a close second on cost effectiveness. So, I think you can feel comfortable moving forward with that information.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Do we have any final comments or reports from the board?
Okay, thank you. As I said before, I had some sort of thank yous and acknowledgments that I wanted to make should the resolution to rescind the merger resolution pass. The first was to Dr. Winston and the administrative team, and though other board members have expressed things that I would have expressed as well, to say that I think those community meetings went a long way towards healing MCCSC's relationship with the community. And I think we got really valuable information that will not be wasted or forgotten. So I hope that you don't feel as though it will be. The other is that I know all throughout this process we've heard from teachers in a variety of formats that they kind of wanted us to make a final decision. And I don't know that what we did tonight will feel like a final decision. I'm fairly certain it won't. But I also think that the teachers have been supportive of larger efforts to look at socioeconomic balance, and so I hope that they'll extend us some grace on having not made a final decision this evening. I personally don't think that we could have made a right final decision tonight if forced to do so. Um, and then the last sort of thank you and acknowledgement that I wanted to make is, again, throughout this process, we certainly heard from a lot of people who were opposed to a merger, but we also heard comments and saw letters to the editor from people who supported the merger, and I don't want them to feel like we've abandoned or forgotten them either. Um, I remember speaking with a friend who said that their family would be somewhat negatively impacted by a merger, and yet that friend said that they would support anything the board did to move the needle towards equity. And I think that most of the people who came out to support the merger um, would have said something similar. That at the end of the day, what they were interested in was supporting equity, and I think that remains a focus of this board. Whether we ultimately end up going forward with a merger as part of a redistricting plan, I think I still really share the value of moving the needle on socioeconomic balance. One speaker in particular at one of the Templeton town halls reminded us of the urgency of now, and that people with fewer resources are often asked to wait for a solution. I haven't forgotten that. I'm still mindful of that, and I think my fellow board members are as well. I'd comment on a totally different thing, but I'm gonna pause there to see if anyone else wants to chime in.
Yeah, I do. I absolutely am grateful for your comments. I think they're all sort of well received by me and hopefully by the public. I also just want to give some gratitude and appreciation to my fellow members of this board. You know, it is an incredibly difficult thing to sit in these seats and to be invested in doing the right thing. And it's also difficult because though we are aligned in our positions and our values very often, we also are not always aligned on how to get to that sort of end result. And it takes an incredible amount of dedication and courage and resilience on the part of all of you who serve. And I am just, sitting in this role as president right now. Others, Brandon has sat in this role, Kathy has sat in this role. It's a hard one, right? And we take a lot of criticism, we take a lot of flack, we take a lot of feedback. Sometimes we get some, positive feedback as well, but it's not easy. And so I also want to extend my gratitude to all of you for being kind, compassionate human beings who are concerned about the well-being of the students in this district, and then also for being concerned about the well-being of our staff and our educators who work in this district. Because I know the hearts of each and every one of you, and I know how much you value that. And so, after a very, very long year, I just want to say thank you. I appreciate all of you so much.
Well, that's a good segue to my next comment, actually. Kathy, I forgot it was your last meeting. I would have baked a cake or something. Maybe we do have a cake. I just, I just really wanted to thank you for your service and say that I've learned so much from you, and I think that our community learns so much from you when you talk about what's going on at the State House. You are going to leave behind some big shoes to fill, and I don't know which one of us is going to be able to take that on. So thank you so much.
Any last board comments?
Yeah, a couple things. One, I'd like to second Aaron's comment about Kathy. You've been a wealth of knowledge as I've come on the board and appreciate everything you've done all along. I also want to give a shout out to the Binford, Jackson Creek, and University robotics teams. I got to witness them at a tournament on Saturday, and they all were just wonderful children, wonderful coaches, and acted with the utmost integrity and manners, and they were just all wonderful at that tournament. I wanted to give those robotics teams a shout out.
Thanks, Ross. I appreciate that. Any last board comments?
I just want to say as well, Kathy will be missed on the board. Thank you so much. I think we've been on together the longest in this board, so appreciate your insight and appreciate just all that you've given to this board and over the years, and lots of you were the president during very, very difficult. I don't think anyone would say, you know what I want to do? I want to be board president during a pandemic. So I appreciate it, even though during that time not everybody agreed on things. I thank you for your leadership during that time, and you will be missed. But you're gonna come to all the meetings still, right?
You
okay,
betcha.
Okay, take a month off. Take
Yeah.
a month off.
Uh-huh.
February. With this seat actually is for you.
Oh, thank you so much.
It'll be reserved.
All right, you just
It has
keep
a
it right there.
Wait, hold on.
Oh,
wait,
sure.
we're gonna let's hold this for a second.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah. We're gonna sing a song. Yeah. No, I'm kidding. We're not. That would have been fun if we would have done a spontaneous
Yeah.
Okay. Hold on. Maybe we will. So Dr. Winston, since we're here, would you like to take this part up?
Sure. As we all know, tonight is Kathy's very last meeting with us. And on behalf of the board, who you've already heard from, the administration, our community, our parents, our families, and most importantly, the children, we thank you. We thank you for your blood, and at times I'm sure it feels like that, your sweat, your tears, your advocacy, your voice. You've always allowed your voice to be heard. We've all grown from it. I certainly have benefited, and seen the value of your contributions over all of these years. And I just want you to know that Beyonce had a song
Right.
once
Sing it, go.
called Irreplaceable. And in many ways, you are so irreplaceable as a board member, just for your dedication. So I personally am honored to be able to say these words to you. I've watched you for many, many years. I've learned from you, and I just want to say thank you as well. And to that end, we have a plaque.
You know, gotta have a plaque.
And it
Martha
says,
would be really happy about this. Maybe.
in her honor. Presented to Kathy Fuentes Rohr in appreciation for dedicated service as president during 2020 and 2021, the hardest years ever. It doesn't say that part. But Brandon did say that part. Secretary, 2018. Member, 2017 to 2024 of the Monroe County Community School Corporation Board of School Trustees. And, Kathy and I recently were at an ISBA conference together, and we had the opportunity to have breakfast. And it was great to be able to reflect upon her early days on the board and the journey that you've had over those years. And so I just want you to know, again, on behalf of all of us, thank you.
Well, thank you.
Can we give her a round of applause? We are gonna do a photo op with you.
Okay, awesome. Well, I want to thank you very, very much, and I know that people who've been in the president's seat understand how difficult and that is. But I have to say, those of us that have sat in the president's seat and even in these seats know that your position, Dr. Winston, and so many people in this school district are very, very difficult seats. And I was looking at some emails that I wrote in like 2017 when I first got on the board, and it was about as embarrassing as looking at my 7th grade diary, frankly, because the learning curve has been huge for me. And I came in here with such a feeling of righteousness, and here I am, and was very, very humbled very, very quickly by how difficult it is and how important it is to be a loving critic in these seats, and that we shouldn't be sitting in these seats criticizing our school district, but actually just using those questions and that eye to help everybody do better by all of our kids. And I think that, from the time when I was strongly encouraged to become president right before a worldwide pandemic, and sat in these seats and read hundreds and responded to hundreds of emails, but ones that said, like, I hope you're going to the funeral of everybody who dies because of what you've done. Like, the amount of anxiety and the sense of responsibility was very, very overwhelming. And I so appreciated learning that, like, 3 really important lessons to me that came out of that experience of being president, but really over the 8 years that I've been in the seat, is that I wish that everybody could learn what I've learned, which is great humility in recognizing when you're in a situation that you don't know what you don't know. And then it sort of leads into the idea that we should be giving each other grace. Most people, in fact, I would guess almost every single person to a T, is doing the best they can with what they know and what they have. And that we should be positive in assuming best intentions of people. We're very, very cynical as a people and very critical. And as soon as you become an elected official, you're suddenly the man and everybody can't stand you and are looking for what do you have to gain. And during COVID, it was part of that. Like, people wondering, what's in it for you that you're taking this stand? What's in it for, that kind of thing. So I think giving grace, and then the last thing is that I so appreciate, there were so many people that blindsided me. I'm just gonna say that, like people who I did carpool with, people who were, their kid and my kid were at camp together, who would have the ability to write an email without coming to me or calling me and saying, you should be ashamed of yourself. My mother never even said that, and believe me, she probably should have many times. And so I think that what I really appreciate was people that came out of the blue, that were just kind, that were curious and not judgmental, and just asked what is going on, as opposed to assuming. And so I'm a better person 8 years later. I thought that I knew gray, but I know lots of gray. The world's not black and white. And I thank everybody for helping me become that better person. And I do think that all the work that I've been lucky enough to be a part of in the last 8 years has seen this school district become a so much more inclusive school district, so much more intentional in ways of trying to help kids that might traditionally fall through the cracks. And it's become, it's on its way and has become a much better place for kids to learn and for people to work. So I'm really proud to be a part of MCCSC, and so glad to be leaving. You can't even believe it. Yeah, I know. I'll be watching. I know.
Well, thank you, Kathy.
Thank you.
All right, Dr. Winston, any last comments?
Just a couple. Parent University, our next Parent University is going to be on January 23rd at 6 p.m. at Jackson Creek Middle School. This is going to be a really important one. It's a very informative session that's going to feature a representative from the Indiana Department of Education who's going to speak specifically on the new diploma, the new high school diploma requirements that were just released last week. So we're very excited about that. This new requirement goes into effect for this year's 8th graders. I think that's the
Yes.
Yes. Yes. This year's 8th graders.
As a mom of an 8th grader, yes.
Okay. And then I also want to just briefly mention that our next Muffins with Marquet, yes, we are still doing the Muffins with Marquet at Unionville Elementary on Friday, January 31st, starting at 9:15 a.m. It's again another opportunity for us to listen, to learn, to talk with families, to talk with our teachers, and understand a little bit deeper what we're doing well and where we can make some improvements. And I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that a small event is happening on Friday at 4 p.m. That's the last day of school. Winter break begins, and we are very happy about, I mean, we're very excited that everyone else will be happy to be on holiday break. And we will see everyone back on January 6th, 2025. That is the end of my report.
Thank you, Dr. Winston. Thank you all who are in attendance tonight and those who are watching as we close out the year. I hope that you find some rest from the chaos. The board will hold its reorganizational meeting on January 7th, and we will welcome new board member Tiana Arouge. The next regularly scheduled board meeting is Tuesday, January 28th, 2025, and with that, we are adjourned.
Oh. Yeah.
Thank you both.
Oh, yes.